Hello, everyone. Hi, guys. Welcome to the final episode of the SEO in Orbit webinar series, where OnCrawl
Um,
will be sending where OnCrawl will be sending technical SEO tips in space. One small step for technical SEO. You know I'm going to say that, right? You know that,
you had
Alex.
to.
I have to. One small step for
Mandatory.
technical SEO, one giant leap for mankind. So today's webinar is called New Perspective on Duplicate Content. And if you have any questions during the webinar, please use the question box in the webinar window, or use the SEO in Orbit hashtag on Twitter. But so first, let me introduce myself. My name is Sido. I'm the Senior Technical SEO at Canon Europe. I'm an OnCrawl ambassador. I hope everybody can see my shirt. I'm very active on social media. Today, I'm joined by the amazing Alexis Sanders. She's the Senior SEO Manager. Correct me. Stop me if I'm wrong, okay? She's the
No, you're
Senior
doing great.
SEO Manager. Yes. She's the Senior SEO Manager and the Senior Technical SEO Manager at Merkel. She also writes for the Moz blog. She's the creator and the host of the SEO in Lab podcast. And she's also the creator of the Technical SEO Expert Challenge. Alexis,
There you go.
you're giving so much to the community. Have I missed
Oh,
anything?
stop. No, no, not at all. Thanks so much, Omi.
Oh, okay, I forgot to say. Okay, I forgot one. She's a regular conference speaker. See, I forgot something. So, so today we're going to be talking about duplicate content. But before we talk about how to find and fix duplicate content, Alexis, let's agree on the definition of duplicate content. So,
Okay. All right.
in my opinion, duplicate content is content that is similar or nearly or very similar. People always forget this one, People always forget this one. Very similar to content that lives on another URL or URLs on the same
Mhm,
website,
mhm, mhm.
or at the same time on another website or websites. So
Yep.
with that in mind,
Mhm.
let's talk about how um, with that in mind, let's talk about how people talk about duplicate content. Now,
Yep.
first, after my definition, it sounds bad, right? My definition sounds bad.
I thought it sounded okay.
So because it sounds bad, a lot of SEOs, a lot of digital marketers around the world are talking about the so-called duplicate content penalty.
Yep.
But we all know that this is a myth, right? We all know that this is not true. So on one side, we are telling people, SEOs, duplicate content is very bad. On the
Mhm.
other side, we are telling people there is nothing like duplicate content penalty. So
Mhm.
Alexis, tell us, should
Mhm.
or why should technical SEOs around the world, digital marketers, care about duplicate content?
I think at the end of the day, it comes down to real performance. So when a bot looks at a specific page, we don't want it to think, hey, these are the exact same pieces of content and we can rank them next to each other. I guess a good slide to get started on is, like you mentioned, there's no manual penalty for duplicate content. So that
Exactly.
doesn't have to necessarily be a concern for us. However, this is a visual from 10 Things I Hate About You. I don't know. Have you seen it before?
Yes, yeah.
Yes,
We're
good.
going to
Okay.
talk about this picture right later on. I want to mention one of your articles.
Okay, awesome. So this is a scene from 10 Things I Hate About You. And essentially in the scene, this guy, Joey Donner, who's like basically the biggest douchebag at the school is coming up to Bianca and saying like, hey, which photo do you like better? There's this
We
one
all be, we've all been
that
there.
has the black
I'm
shirt and
just
there's one
saying.
that has white shirt. There's like literally no difference. And I think in the scene she's like, I think the left one is more pensive. And he's like, I thought it was more thoughtful. But basically, that's what you don't want your website to be. You don't want to say like, hey, there's these two exact same things that you have to compete with one another in a search engine ranking type situation. Because really, what we want to do is have one consolidated experience
Mm-hmm.
that can actually rank and perform within search engines. So going back to this example, a user may see something like, oh, this looks so lovely, and they see just a black search, whereas the bot says, I don't know, like they both look the same to me. And that's kind of like very
So,
high conceptual. We'll get into
so you
more details
mentioned
later.
both. You mentioned, sorry. So there is a bit of a lag, I
No,
think,
go ahead.
between the London and USA. So you mentioned the bot. How does this affect the crawl budget? How does
Yeah, so
duplicate
for
content
sites
affect?
that are very large, so think of sites that are over 100,000 pages, sites, for instance, like Zillow or Walmart, or sites that have
Mhm,
a numerable amount of pages. Crawl budget is something that affects pages at varying different levels. And there's a blog out there that I wrote based on Frederic Dubu's presentation at one of um, the SMX East event. And basically, the core of it is that there are budgets set at varying levels, at subdomain
mhm,
levels, at different server levels. And the whole idea is Google, Bing crawlers, they want to be polite crawlers. They don't want to go onto your site and slow the performance down for actual users. So what they do is whenever they sense some sort of change in performance, they'll
mhm,
back off. And this happens at varying different levels. And that's where crawl budget comes into the picture. If you have a site that is massively large, you want to make
mhm,
sure that you're giving the most consolidated experience that is relevant for your users.
mhm. And because we're talking about crawl budget and duplicate
Mm,
content in
yep.
relation to duplicate content, and I see this one a lot, why is actually duplicate content considered a technical SEO
Mm,
issue, another content SEO issue? A lot of content
yeah.
SEOs are actually asking this question.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is a really great conversation topic overall. That, like, when you hear duplicate content, you
Mhm.
think content, so hand it over to the content
Exactly.
marketing team, right? But really, there are so many facets that go into it. And I think there's a slide that's much better later that could describe this. Yeah. So if we stop here for a second for comic effect, basically, there are multiple different sources for duplication. And the slide, I mean, it just goes on forever and ever. Give it a second to work through everything.
Oh
I'm ready
yeah, I
to go
can
to the
see.
next
Sorry,
slide.
the screen is behind my camera.
Oh no. Okay,
I was
basically it's
struggling
like a
to.
Star Wars visual of like all the different issues that
Yeah.
could pop up. So if you head over to the next slide really quickly, thanks, Rebecca. There are two totally different sides of duplicate content. There's the technical side,
Mhm.
which you can go into things like staging sites, HTTP
Yeah.
versus HTTPS migration, subdomains, URLs, file
Mhm.
extensions, not fire extensions. um, but there's all these different reasons for technical SEO and development to be involved in duplicate content. But then on the totally other side of it, it can be a
Mhm.
content issue. So maybe you have repetitive pages, maybe you have articles that are
Mhm.
basically saying the exact same thing, or not addressing people in a different way and providing a unique point of view. Maybe it's PR releases that are your issue. And some of the things
Mhm.
even fit in between both of those. So like facets, sorts, image only pages. So really, this is a cross team issue, which is something that I think makes duplicate content so interesting because, when I hear it as someone who
Mhm.
has a more of a technical SEO background, I think, oh gosh, just hand it over to the content marketing guys. They'll handle it. But at the same time, like a lot of the responsibility relates to the developers, the CMS, and that side of it. What are your thoughts coming from a
Well,
front end side?
I honestly love. I love this slide. I'm gonna definitely use it for training my ACO teams. because
Sweet. I'll
explaining,
switch to
yeah,
ours.
and I love that you actually, there is a crossover between content and technical SEO
Mm,
responsibility for finding and fixing at the same time, um, duplicate content. So looking at this slide, it looks like, especially HTTP versus HTTPS, probably
mm,
HTTP migrations or something like that, subdomains,
mm.
uh, uh, syndicating content. I'm just looking at
Yeah.
the slides. Uh, Team content. It sounds like most duplicate content is actually unintentional, right? It sounds like most duplicate
Yeah.
content
I'd
is
say a lot
actually
is.
unintentional. So how? So the next
Yep.
question obviously is going to be how as an SEO, either technical or content SEO, how do you find duplicate
Mm.
content? And you have to tell me your favorite tool. But before that, I'm going to tell you my favorite
Yeah.
tool,
No, of
which is
course.
actually Grammarly.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
It's not
No.
even an
Perfect.
SEO tool, right? It's not even an SEO tool. But finding duplicate
No, it
content with
totally is.
Grammarly is the easiest thing ever, to be
Mm.
honest with you. It's
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
the easiest thing
Mm.
ever. And it's not even an SEO tool, which is also going to help you with grammar and writing better
So, how do you
content.
use it?
So
I'd love to hear more about how you use Grammarly.
yeah, so I use the plagiarism checker finder, and
Hmm.
literally all you have to do is if you're going to write a new piece of content or if you're going to publish a new page, I always ask my
Hmm.
content publisher to go to Grammarly and check if it has been published anywhere else. And normally we're going to
Hmm.
find it within minutes, to be honest with you,
Hmm.
within
Hmm.
minutes. Obviously, this got nothing to
Yeah.
do with semantic search or close content. We're talking about finding exact content. But it
Mm.
helps a lot because, especially now that I'm in charge of 56 websites across
Yeah.
Asia,
It's impossible to maintain.
Europe, and Africa. Canon
Mm.
Europe, although it's called Canon Europe, you're
Mm.
in charge of a lot more than Europe. So finding duplicate content
Mm.
with Grammarly is the easiest thing to do, to be honest with you,
That's
with the
awesome. Such a
plagiarism
great tip.
checker. Yeah. So, but now you're gonna tell me your favorite tool, and you're
Okay.
gonna tell
So,
me how do you find duplicate content.
okay. So I threw in a bunch of slides here because I had so many things that I
Oh,
love,
okay, you
and
got the slides as
because this is
well.
such a
Okay.
multifaceted issue. Yeah, yeah, I threw in a bunch. And actually, I did want to mention going back to it. You mentioned that so much of duplicate content is unintentional, and
Okay.
actually, this is a problem that engineers are very familiar with. And in one of the books called Introduction to Information Retrieval, which I think its most recent copyright was 2008, so it's way outdated.
Mhm.
But at the same time, they estimated that about 40% of the web was duplicate content. So just something to keep in mind. So here
I
I have
hope it
some
gets to
time
be better
slides
now.
which have been running. But okay, so anyways, so the first part, I'm going to mention some tools in a minute, but I think
Hmm.
starting off with the base of knowing your user journey, creating a strong hierarchical taxonomy so you know where everything
Hmm.
fits. That can be really hard to do because sometimes our websites were made 20 years ago and they didn't think about how
Yes,
big or how they
definitely.
would scale. So understanding having a hierarchy that works and knowing that
Hmm.
every piece of content has a place is really
Hmm.
important. Making sure to prioritize duplicate content. You guys saw the list; it was
Hmm.
ginormous of things that you could
Hmm.
potentially consider. But knowing what is
So
actually go
let
ahead.
me just stop you here. So are you saying that the first thing we should do is think about the website structure?
I think the first thing you should do is know your user journey. I think that's the most important because
Hmm.
knowing where your user is at any point is going to help you to later prioritize what you're going to do. But I do think that
Hmm.
knowing your information architecture is really high up there.
Hmm. Okay. Yes. Yeah. And tools.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna
Oh,
check.
for tools? Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah. If you want to change, we can skip through this section. Sorry, Rebecca. Make you have to click a lot. But if you go through these guys, basically, I thought that laid the groundwork for what essentially you'd be
Oh,
doing. So if we want to
obviously,
get
we
into
all
tools,
use OnCrawl.
yeah, so, oh, pause. I do have something to say here. So for OnCrawl, in the duplicate content report, one thing that I really like here is the ability to segment your particular URL structures. And then that allows you to really dive into things that are meaningful for you. So setting that up is really useful. So if you go to the next slide, you can see a visual of that here. So you can see that different pages have, sorry, one more slide, Rebecca. I'm sorry.
Is it moving? No?
Okay, perfect. So you can get a visual here of everything that, the sections that need the most attention. In this case, the site needs a lot of attention. If you go on to the next slide. Sorry, they're kind of quick. We have a little bit of a lag.
Yeah, I can see that.
So this jumped a little bit, but that's okay. So for Google, I think if you want to go about it manually, you can do that as well. Typing direct searches in Google, doing things by site search, using the in-URL site search operator in title, or even using the file extensions. I think there are some slides in here that we missed. So I'm going to pull it up on my end just so I don't miss anything here. Oh, never mind. Okay, so next, I think GSC added a really nice duplicate content report, which I think is really useful to identifying what actually they're seeing on their side and what they believe is duplicate content. That's a very useful tool that we've been using recently. I'm going to go to the next slide.
Rebecca?
Great. So I also added in a bunch of plagiarism tools as well. So QText, NoFlag.
My one is there.
Grammarly. Yeah, no, I know. I was like, oh, this is so cool. Other people use this too.
Yeah,
Yeah, using those definitely, because as you said, like, you want to make sure that your content is original, or even you want to make sure that from a bot's perspective that it's not being perceived as similar.
Yes,
and I also really like, yep, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that Grammarly helps me really to find pieces of content, because as I said earlier, it's not about the whole article being identical to another article. Sometimes it's about, segments, and Grammarly is quite good at finding these segments around the internet,
Definitely. And I love the fact that we have these tools that allow us to be more empathetic towards search engine bots, because none of us are robots. None of us can see things that they're able to see on their perspective. And if you're getting some feedback from things like OnCrawl or Grammarly that are telling you like, hey, like this looks really similar, there's probably something to dig into there. And the same thing with keyword density tools. So the first one is TagCrowd. The second one is SEO Books, keyword density tool checker, which I use often.
Okay, this is a good advice. So basically, what you say, from what we are saying, actually, both of us, it sounds like resolving duplicate content is it's not an easy job. I wouldn't say it's an easy job, but it's not that difficult. But basically, it's all dependent. Resolving finding and resolving duplicate, it really depends on the type of content that we are publishing, right? Because let's be honest, if it's a blog, it's going to be one duplicate content issue. If it's an e-commerce website, because say this shirt's got different colors or something like that, it's going to be a completely different issue, right? So
yeah, I
do
think
you
there's
have an
definitely
interesting story to tell? Do you have anything interesting? Do you have an interesting story, something, a memorable case?
Yeah, so I just threw in some data from like the last 2 months of some of the clients that I've seen that have memorable duplicate content issues. So if we go to the next slide. So this one I thought was really interesting. So we actually have a site that is massively large, so it runs into crawl budget issues. To just give you guys a scale, it has 86 million pages that have not been indexed yet, and there's like only 1% of the actual pages have been indexed. So it's a massively large site. At the same time, they don't have a lot of unique content across pages because they're basically a real estate site. So they have a ton of pages that are very, very similar. So we ended up adding some unique content on particular pages, pulling in some different information about those specific locations. And it actually, I thought it was surprising how quickly that their performance has jumped up. So as you can see, these numbers are really recent. I tried to opt for things that were more recent, so they were more relevant, because in SEO, every 6 months you have to reassess your understanding of everything.
Of
So I
course.
thought this was really interesting. I know it's true though.
This is actually what I
Next
like. I
prev.
love about SEO.
Yeah.
We are learning every single day, absolutely every single day. And even when you think I know everything, Alexis Sanders comes online and
You're
tells you
humbled.
something new, and you're like, "Whoa, man, what just happened?"
Oh, stop it. Stop it. But yeah, I want to give you guys some actual performance that we've seen recently. And I tried to get this pretty granular. So this is Google data, and just Google organic. And as soon as we basically added that unique content to the pages that were basically being perceived as duplicate, there was about a 64.2 lift in performance. So, I think that's also a very generic, like probably a generic case study, because I know we've talked about we've talked about, authoritativeness and unique content for a long time. But it is interesting to see that as soon as search engines see content as something that's different and valuable in a unique way, that that is still being rewarded.
I'm
So
glad you
that's
said
one.
that.
I have two other ones. Go ahead.
No. Continue if you want, but because I'm glad you said that, because what, 18 months ago you wrote this piece
Yeah.
of article. What was it called? Actually, I've got it here in front of me. Duplicate content and strategic resolution. That was
Oh, thanks.
that was published on the OnCrawl blog. If I'm not mistaken, by the way, I love this article. I use it a lot
Oh,
for
thanks.
internal team training. Why
Oh,
not?
stop it. Thanks.
Uh,
Yeah. There's so much good
but
content
now,
out there.
yeah, but now I want to say this one was written 60 months ago, 16,
Yeah.
18 months ago, but since then, a lot of things have changed, right? Have changed. Like Google told us in March that the real prev and next are not relevant anymore.
Yeah.
So do you think that everything that you're telling us in this article is still relevant, or things have completely changed since
Yeah. I'd
last
probably
year?
cut that out. I'd probably cut rel next prev out if I could go back and like change it and update it. But I think most of this stuff is still relevant. I hope that it's not going to be relevant in the next 5 to 10 years, though. I think a lot of the stuff that developers have to deal with duplicate content is way too manual, and a lot of the stuff should be resolved by CMSs and Adobe. People shouldn't have to go through and make sure that all the canonical tags are set to the correct place. I think there's a lot of opportunity for automation in that area, especially in the technical side, because a lot of the stuff, like, we should be able to detect immediately if any of our links are going to HTTP and send them to HTTPS, stuff like that.
Yes, definitely. It's not always possible. I mean, some backend
That's
systems
true.
are far too old. I'm talking from a technical,
Yes.
pure
Oh, yeah.
technical
100%.
SEO, side. Some SMSs, if they're not
Yeah.
updated, which is always not, it's not always easy because they're quite expensive at
Yeah.
the same time, right? I literally had
Yeah.
a client, last year coming to me, asking me to, update the CMS, which was literally published something like 18 years ago. I mean, it's not easy to migrate
Yeah.
an old CMS to a new CMS. Even at
No, it's
Canon
super
last
challenging.
year,
Yeah.
actually, I say last year, but we started last year. We finished this March. It took us like 12 months. We migrated all the 56 websites to a new
Yeah.
custom
Oh my
built
God.
CMS. We spent quite a lot of money. Quite a lot of
It's so
money.
much work.
So it's
Yeah.
confusing. I really wanted to talk about a little bit about, not really wanted
Yeah.
to, but not a lot, about the real prev next, issue, because sometimes Google is confusing us, to be honest with you. Actually, from my experience, last year I had a client, a big client here in the UK, asked me to audit their website. Their main issue was this pagination. I fixed it, and we had a massive, um, uh, number of new visits coming. Massive. The whole online visibility exploded. Yeah, this year, I mean, in March, Google
Yeah.
told us that they don't actually um, they don't actually take into consideration anymore this real prev next. You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
it's a bit confusing, don't you think?
Yeah.
It's a bit
Yeah, I'd
confusing
agree. I think at the
because
same time, like, yeah.
from my own
Go
experience,
ahead.
I actually saw a increase of online visibility by fixing the
Yeah.
pagination last year, not 10 years
Yeah.
ago, last year.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No,
saying
like
that,
I think it is confusing, and like SEO can be super confusing because what you see on your website can be totally different from what I see on my website, and it's not a
definitely,
one size
definitely.
fits all approach. So I definitely think that probably the real next period was a miss on Google's part. Um, at the same
So,
time, like their organization is huge. Like I like hats off to them for telling us anything because like it's got to be
yeah,
hard to manage all of that, like dealing with all the different things that are happening and all the different moving
yeah, in the
pieces.
whole world.
So
I get it. So saying that,
yeah, in the whole
what do you
world.
think?
We're being
Yeah,
tough
I
on
mean,
them,
everywhere,
but
not in space where we're sending these tips, but in the whole world. So
yeah,
saying that, what do you think gonna be the? what do I hope everybody can see my T-shirt because I actually have the rocket here.
yeah.
So what do you think? Joking aside. So what do you think the duplicate management will look in the future,
Yeah.
especially in relation to the single result answers? And obviously, I'm talking about voice search and
Hmm.
Alexa and the
Hmm.
rest.
Yeah, so when I read this
Do,
question, I
do,
was
do you think
thinking
this
more
thing's
about
gonna
like,
change?
yeah, I have this as hope for the future. But basically, so as
Ah,
I mentioned
okay.
before, less technical based duplicate content issues, more automation. So any type of like unit testing as well as external page testing. So basically, what I mean by that is sites like for instance, Little Warden that are crawling your site consistently, like OnCrawl or Botify, that can notify you immediately when something
Mhm,
has changed. For instance, if you have a no index on your homepage, that should be something that you should be automatically notified about and not have to wait until your performance dip to be notified by your
mhm.
analytics team or your analytics
Yes, yes,
software.
exactly.
I would love to see automation of an automatic detection of highly similar pages and page types for writers and content
Mhm,
managers. So basically doing what you do in Grammarly, but automatically within a CMS setting. So, if
mhm,
even if someone tries to publish, they say, hey, like this is kind of similar. Like, are you sure you want to publish this?
mhm. By
I
the
think
way, I've
obviously,
got a plugin. Sorry, sorry for interrupting you. I've got a
yeah.
plugin like this on my personal website, but it's a WordPress
Wow.
website. So I just
This
installed this plugin,
evident.
and every
Oh,
time
that's
we
so cool.
publish, I can see if I've got, it's similar to Grammarly,
Nice.
basically. But I guess it's
Yeah,
not
I would
easy to
love.
implement everywhere.
Mhm. And does it allow you to see like across the site or is it across the web?
Across the web. I mean, the whole point is
Okay, cool.
you don't copy other people. I mean, this is the point of this plugin.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
It
no,
needs
definitely.
improvement and stuff. But you're saying something similar anyway. You're saying something similar, right?
Yeah.
For bigger websites.
I love
Mine is
that.
quite small.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think there's a lot of value too in looking at it just in terms of your website too. But
Of
anyways,
course, of course,
um,
of course. When it comes to
and
Canon,
then
I have to do that. I have to because I'm in charge of 56 websites. But my personal website is it's a different issue, right?
no,
But
definitely.
also,
And then the last one I mentioned was just some sort of system that allows us to tell Google when they've gotten the canonical tag wrong. I know that this happens a lot with sites that we've seen where sometimes the canonical tag is wrong and Google will respect it, or sometimes the canonical tag is right and Google won't respect it. So just being able to clearly balance that, I think that would be really cool. Like if something wrong happened to the development side, you can't get any changes pushed through for another month. There is a case study I have a little bit earlier about an accidental
mhm.
canonical tag issue where about 250 pages were sent to HTTPS, and that affected the overall performance of the site. So just being able to identify that, I think that would be pretty interesting. But those are my
So
hopes
basically,
for
what
the
you're saying is that
future.
Google has to take a little bit more active, proactive role in helping us
Mm,
identify all these issues rather than us always relying on them,
mm,
because they've got the bots, and most of the time every company
mm,
got one ACO. This ACO is a human being and
mm,
can make
mm.
mistakes and sometimes can't even see everything that's been published on the website, right?
I think it's like it's
So,
both sides of it. Like we need to have different tools. We have to have better internal tools, obviously, and then I think as they develop their systems more, hopefully they'll be able to help us out more, add a little clarity around that.
mhm. Okay, okay, I get
That's my hopes.
how.
I don't
Yeah,
know. These are also hopes. They're not like
I really want to ask you more
actuals.
questions, but I can see that we only have 10 minutes. So
Oh my God.
before going into Q&A, I
Sorry
know we
to
can
pack
talk
so much
for
in.
days. I know that. And actually
Mm.
you're the one talking. When I start talking, that's it. So let's do before going into Q&A, I've been asked to ask you some questions regarding this
Okay.
series. So, do you have a favorite technical SEO trick?
Yes, I added a few in the slides here. So I don't know how many people are used to using Amazon's web services. So Amazon Web Services, I know I said
Mhm,
Amazon's web services. So AWS. I love the EC2 creating a remote computer instance. I think it's awesome. It's a way to get an additional computer that's remote that allows you to run like really large crawls really quickly. And anything that requires like a lot of computing power, it's really
mhm.
awesome, and it's like lightning fast once you get it set up. But definitely make sure to stop it or terminate it, the instance
Uh-huh.
once you're done,
Okay.
because otherwise it does cost money. So, but I love that. I think that's like
I-
one of my favorite things. Checking. Go ahead.
No, no, no. I'm listening. I'm listening. Checking. Yeah, checking.
Okay. Okay. Um, yeah, checking the mobile first testing tool. Google has mentioned that this is the most accurate depiction of what they're actually looking at. It
Mm-hmm.
actually looks at the DOM, and so I think that's a useful tool. Occasionally switching your user agent to Googlebot just to see what they're actually seeing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
technicalseo.com is one of Merkel's tools, so this is a plug for one of our tools, but I really do love this tool because robots.txt can get confusing at times. So if you have any robots.txt issues, definitely, checking out that tool, or even
Mm-hmm.
Google's tool is fine, but I think usually have to have something live on the site. This allows you to edit it in an editor, which is really cool. I love
Mm-hmm.
Screaming Frog's log analyzer. I think they do great work at Screaming Frog, and also their team's really responsive too. If you have like any questions, they answer them right away.
Oh,
If
okay.
you
Yeah.
have any HT access,
I second
go
that.
ahead.
No, I
Yeah,
just said I
yeah, no,
second that. Their team is quite responsive, but it's the same with the OnCrawl team. Let's be honest,
yeah, no,
and not
definitely.
because we're
Oh,
in my
very true.
webinar. Just
Very
because
true.
they
Yeah.
always they always answer all my questions within minutes.
Hmm.
I love it. I love it. So the
Oh,
next
yes,
question:
definitely.
least favorite technical SEO question that you
Yeah.
often
I
get
thought
asked.
about this, and like my original answer was something along the lines of like, I don't like when someone wants it to be asked solved immediately because I feel like you need time to like
Mhm.
go through all the different issues.
Doesn't have to
But
be
I
technical
realized
SEO,
later,
SEO.
but I realized that it's robots.txt. Like I think it ends up being, it can be really confusing. It's like this archaic file that looks like it can use regex, but totally can't use regex. It has
Mhm,
like this disallow and allow, and there's different precedences for both, which can get confusing. Different bots can ignore certain things, even though,
mhm,
they're not supposed to ignore certain things. So making sure you're familiar with Google's documentation on that is really useful.
mhm,
I really like using, like I said, technicalseo.com's robots.txt testing tool is like a lifesaver for me because, you can go through and like make sure that, your assumptions about what is right.
mhm.
So yeah, those are my
Okay.
least favorite questions, honestly. What
Mine is
about
not
you? Do you
actually
have
a
do you
technical.
have a favorite
Yeah,
one?
mine
Do
is not actually a technical
you have a
issue. It's
least favorite?
the length of the content. I hate when I go to a conference or something. Every time I go to a conference,
Mm,
people are like short text, long text. Where do you want me
mm,
to start?
mm.
I need an hour to explain
Yeah,
whether your
no, for sure.
text should be short or long, and and the next one, related to this one, do we still need to do keyword research? So how do you find your audience? How do you understand your audience without keyword research? How? I really, sometimes I want to ask them really, how do you actually do it? You know, but obviously. At conferences, I'm not allowed to shout at people.
Yeah.
So the
Make
next
a hard call.
question, yeah, oh, we're running out of time. A favorite Google bot? Who
I
came up
said,
with this question?
yeah, I said my favorite one was like the new evergreen Google bot because that's the only one that matters.
Mhm.
But also, yeah, I thought this was kind of funny. But anyways,
Okay, a new evergreen Google bot. Well, this is
yeah,
a
yeah,
good
that's my
answer.
favorite. Yeah, the one that's
Yeah, I like it. You know. And
JavaScript
last
works.
question,
The new
a
stuff.
favorite planet. Obviously, if we
Jupiter.
send some of your tips in space, I say we because actually I'm going to France this week. You know,
Yeah.
for those who don't know, we're gonna send all the tips on Thursday. Yeah, on Thursday, Bordeaux, France. I'm gonna be
Oh,
there.
yay.
Hence the rocket here. You know, going into space.
Yeah.
I'm not going into space. It's just Alexis' cool SEO, technical SEO tips. So, a favorite planet, please?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely Jupiter. Love it. I think
Definitely
you can see
Jupiter.
it. Yeah, you can see it in the night sky almost always. And like I had always
Hmm.
thought Jupiter was like kind of this reddish planet because that's how they depict it on a lot of images. But if you actually look at it
Hmm.
through like a telescope, it's like just this like beautiful, like creamy white planet that has like a lot of, storms and
Huh?
stuff going on. Kind of cool.
I've never thought about
Yeah, I like that you can see it.
that.
Yeah, you can see it in the sky. Yeah, it's really, I just like the, I can always see it. I'm like, oh, there's
Mhm.
Jupiter. Kind of looks like a star, but it's not.
Yeah. I always wanted to go to the moon, hence my quote at the beginning of this webinar.
Yeah, that, I mean, that's realistic, Elon's working on it for you.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So, are there any questions, Rebecca? Are there any questions? Mm, actually, let me open my windows as well. Um, Rebecca, are there any questions
I
in the
think I saw
chat?
one came through from Damien. So with
I saw one
HSTS,
coming.
so, oh, go ahead.
Actually, I saw
So does it
one
matter to have a
coming to
split
my
protocol for duplicate
LinkedIn.
content?
Um,
So
okay,
Damien,
I've
yes.
got one from.
Oh,
Okay,
yes.
uh, can you
Go
see it
ahead.
actually? I actually can't see it. Damien Anderson. With HSTS, does it matter to have a split protocol for duplicate content?
Yeah, you have to have all HTTPS.
Mhm. And one question
Great
from,
question. Yeah.
yeah, actually, this is a great question, very technical. I've got a question here. People, why you, okay, people, I said Twitter, not LinkedIn, and not my personal, one from Peter Jones. I like this one. Is translated content duplicate content?
That's a really great
Can,
question. I think a lot of times when you're using something like hreflang, the reason
mm-hmm,
that you're using it is for, well, let's say, for instance, you have a site in the US and you have a site in
mm-hmm,
another English site in like Ireland or something. It can be hard to disambiguate what's what.
mm-hmm,
I don't think it's necessarily, I wouldn't consider it duplicate content, but I would definitely make sure that you have your hreflang tag set up
mm-hmm,
appropriately to indicate like that this is actually the same experience, but it's designed for this particular
mm-hmm.
audience.
I mean,
Good
it has
question.
been translated, right? I mean,
Mhm.
things sound different in Chinese and English, I would say. Another question from Raman T. Hi there, I'm having HTTPS as a
Mhm.
canonical HTTP to HTTPS and not having HTTPS 301 redirect for all domains.
Okay, let me read this.
But returns 200 OK response. Can this cause duplication? Can you actually see it because
Oh,
it's a long question?
yeah, yeah. So basically, um, to recap, my understanding of this question is that he's using canonical tags instead of 301 redirects for an HTTPS migration, essentially from HTTP to HTTPS.
Mhm,
Ramon, I would definitely check to see what's happening within the SERP first, because my almost esoteric advice would be that this is okay.
mhm,
You obviously, the first, you would want to ideally, if it's the exact same page, have a 301. But canonical tags I have seen work in the past for this type of migration. I've seen it accidentally happen. And actually, if you want to go back, Rebecca, I'm sorry to force you to do this, but if you want to go back to the slide on the HTTP S issue, I can show you that canonical tags actually did work the wrong way.
Yeah, this
So
is my
hopefully for
experience
you
as
it
well.
worked the right way. But yeah,
From my experience, I wouldn't say it's wrong, but this implementation is a bit tricky because normally the canonical will canonicalize to the same page. Normally that's what developers do. And here you have to actually point it to the HTTPS version. So straight away you're creating problems for yourself. My personal recommendation is go for 301, you know. And I've actually seen cases where with this implementation where people had problems. It sounds right, but sometimes it gives problems. This is my experience with it. I'll strongly recommend going for 301. You know, if you're gonna migrate the
yeah,
website, you may as
I'd
well
agree
do
with
it
that as
now.
well.
And you know, end of story. Once you do it, that's it. Another
Yeah,
question from Natalie Smith. LinkedIn. I'm very
hi
active on
Natalie.
LinkedIn, so I understand this one. I'm very famous. No, I've got my 5 seconds for. um, um, when you talk about duplicate content, do you? I'll try and make it shorter. When you talk about duplicate content, do you only do you mean content in the body, or do duplicate page titles also affect SEO? Or can be treated as duplicate content?
I
A
don't
long
think so.
thing.
Let's say for instance, like you have a title that's very similar or something. Like both are different locations, but the information on the page is different. I think that you would end up being fine. What really matters is I think Google and search engines look at it as an overall type thing, and titles are something that we can use to identify where there might be issues like that. So that's where the in title URL site the site search comes in. But at the same time, I don't think just because you have the same title tag, it'll cause like a duplicate content issue per se. What are your thoughts,
Yeah.
Omi?
Well, my opinion, you shouldn't have duplicate page titles
Theoretically,
and meta descriptions. Talk to
yeah.
your technical SEO. Ask them to write down some code, not the developer, not the technical SEO guy, where even if it's a paginated page, it's enough to say page 2, page 3, or something like that, and straight away it's a different one. You shouldn't have, but this is nothing. I mean, it's nothing to do with duplicate content. It's to do with the way you present yourself in the SERPs. So with that in mind,
That's
and
true.
because we're running out of time, I'm sorry, guys. Quickly, where can people find you if they want to ask you questions? Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
constantly looking at your face. I have to look at the camera.
I'm looking at your
Where can
face.
people actually find you? If you want
Yeah,
to
of
talk to
course.
me, I'm very
So
active on LinkedIn, as we just realized. But where can
yeah.
people find you?
Yeah, so you guys can find me on Twitter at Alexis K. Sanders. Reach out anytime. Yeah.
Okay,
That's
perfect. With that in mind,
Or
Alexis,
actually,
thank
if you
you.
want to too, like if you want to email me, you can email me as well at seointhelab@merkleinc.com. Yeah, if you have any questions.
I'll make sure that I post those two on LinkedIn and Twitter. You know,
Thanks.
with that in mind,
Thanks,
Alexis, it
homie.
was great having you. I just want to remind everybody that we're going to send all the best tips from the webinar series into space Thursday, 27th of June, Bordeaux, France. I'm going to be there. Other famous ACO, I'm not famous. A famous ACO is going to be there.
We are.
Alexis, thank you very much for joining us today, guys. Thank you very much for
Thank you
tuning
so
in,
much.
and
Thanks
have a
everyone for
great
coming.
week.
Thanks, homie. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.